17th century. This is one of those seafaring stories passed between sailors during long, arduous voyages, but as with most sea stories, there is an element of truth to the tale. The ship was doomed to being swallowed by seas once the captain refused to turn back towards safer waters during a rough storm. Passengers and crew begged the captain to take a safer seas, and still he refused. He thought he would be able to take his ship through the storm, and somewhat foolhardily challenged God to take him, his people, and the ship down. Thus, the ship was taken down. The Flying Dutchman is seen at sea either as a light or somewhat translucent image, and brings with it a sense of doom. Moral of the story: don't mess with the sea. Is there a Flying Dutchman in the Pirates of the Caribbean? It sounds really familiar. Number 2, the Brown Lady. The Brown Lady is probably one of the most famous ghost photographs in existence. She appears in a photograph taken at Raynham Hall, Norfolk, England, as a translucent white figure in a hooded robe on a staircase. She's known as the Brown Lady because she's most commonly seen in a heavy brown dress. The most common theory surrounding who the Brown Lady is that she is Dorothy Walpole, who was married to Viscount Charles Townshend. She died in 1726 under what many people now believe to be mysterious circumstances, and was seen regularly around the hall until the photograph was taken of her in 1936. She's now seen far less frequently. Imagine you get your picture taken and you're like, oh, no, I'm not going to be hanging around here anymore. Number 3, the Stanley Hotel. Some of the most famous hauntings and ghost sightings have taken place at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, which was the inspiration for Stephen King's The Shining, which, as an homage to the place, now plays 24/7 on every TV channel. I don't know if this is a controversial statement, but I think The Shining sucks. Like, it's so boring to me. Like, I don't understand the story, and then Doctor Sleep comes out and it makes perfect sense. Like, am I the only one out there? A few of the ghostly goings on at the hotel actually appear in the book and in the film. For example, staff at the hotel claim to have heard music and a commotion in the ballroom in the middle of the night, and whilst it has been completely empty. Children are heard racing through the halls, and guests have even reported seeing ghostly figures watching them in their rooms. Room 407 is thought to be home to Lord Dunry, who used to own the land on which the hotel is built. He's often blamed for any jewellery that goes missing, and, unsurprisingly, for the large amount of activity that occurs on the 4th floor. I would like to see the Stanley Hotel. I don't know if I'd want to stay there, but I would like to go and see it. Number 4, the Barini Haunting. Starting in the late 1970s, the Barini Haunting occurred at the residence of Joe and Rose Barini and their 2 children in New England. husband, asking for help of the medium. He told her that he and her daughter had died due to the curse of the family because too many people had died at the hands of the Winchester gun. Sarah had to move, and not only that, but she had to build a house specifically for spirits. But she couldn't just build the house for them. If she ever stopped building, the curse would get her too. A bell tower was added to summon and dismiss the spirits, and a seance room to speak with the spirits directly, as well as her husband. The house is known as the Mystery House, and in fact, tours are still given there today. Due to the odd layout of the house, designed by the flummoxed bad spirits and keep Sarah safe from the curse, hallways double back on themselves, doorways dropped down to nowhere and led to windows, stairposts were installed upside down, and everything in the house had 13 of something, 13 stairs, 13 panes of glass, 13 windows in the 13th bathroom. Wherever she thought using the number 13 would keep her safe from the demons or not remains to be seen, but it's a fascinating house. Not only that, but all the summoning of the spirits reportedly means that the house is brimming with paranormal activity. Organs are said to play of their own accord, and there are cold spots throughout the house. Voices are heard with no explanation for their origin, and there have been even sightings of spirits throughout the house. Yeah, I think we all know about the Winchester house, don't we? It's pretty wild. Number 6. Alcatraz. Some of the most famous ghosts and ghost stories come straight out of Alcatraz, because what could be spookier than an abandoned prison on an island? People still visit parts of the prison that are off limits today, even though it is highly forbidden, and bring back with them stories of ghouls, ghosts, and incredibly terrifying encounters following them back to the mainland. The first hauntings were reported in 1857, when men were still being imprisoned there, and one of the most notorious stories was reported in the 1940s when a figure dressed in clothing from the 19th century haunted cell block D, which contained an isolation cell. One inmate pleaded with guards one night. He was being attacked by the apparition. He was screaming, crying, begging, pleading for help. He fell silent come morning, and the guards finally went to check on him. When it was found that he had been strangled to death in a way that could not possibly inflict upon himself, he too became one of Alcatraz's many ghosts. Over the years, reports of cold spots, injuries on guards and inmates at the hands of an unseen and unknown entity, howls and screams from an unseen person, and much, much more have been reported at Alcatraz, making it one of the spookiest spots in America, and well deserving of a spot on the famous ghost sighting list. Number 7. Amityville. And we definitely all know about this one. The Amityville haunting is perhaps the most famous ghost story in America. Ronald DeFeo Jr. was convicted for the 1974 killing of his mother, father, and 4 of their children at their home in Amityville, New York. Reports indicate that the gun Ronald used didn't have a silencer, and there was no sign of a struggle inside the house. Facts that left investigators puzzled. In 1975, a new family, the Lutzes, moved into the Amityville home, having bought it at a discounted price. They lived there for less than a month. During that time, voices were heard around the house. Their daughter developed an imaginary friendship with a red-eyed pig called Jody. The house attracted swarms of flies. Some stories claim that Ronald had supernatural strength, could speak in ancient languages that the boy had no knowledge of, and could apparently move or levitate the mattress he was lying on. Since 1949, investigators have called into question many of these claims, providing evidence to suggest that Roland was a psychologically troubled boy who hated to attend school and had abilities were far from supernatural. In any event, the exorcism took place. The event inspired a 1971 novel called The Exorcist, which in turn inspired the famous movie in 1973. Yes, I thought so. Believe it or not, I've actually never watched The Exorcist. Number 9, the Tower of London. I've actually been there. It's very rare that when I read some of these places I've actually been to them, but this one I've actually been to. Britain's numerous castles are hotspots for ghost stories. The 900-year-old Tower of London is said to contain numerous ghosts, and the Queen's House is considered by Tower officials to be one of the most haunted places. Among the ghosts in the Queen's House is that of Arabella Stuart, cousin of King James I. Arabella made the mistake of marrying against the king's wishes and was sent to the Tower as punishment. According to the ghost story, she is still serving her time. In another spooky tale, a phantom bear is said to haunt one section of the Tower of London, called the Martin Tower. A guard who saw the phantom bear is said to have dropped dead from shock. The Tower of London served as a menagerie for part of its history and held a variety of animals, including bears. And number 10, the 1200 BC ghost story from Egypt. This seems interesting. In 1915, Egyptologist Castro Maspero published a translation of an ancient Egypt ghost story, possibly set in Luxor, ancient Thebes, that was discovered on 4 pieces of pottery. In the story, a ghost of a mummified man tells a high priest of the god Ammon about his current condition. I grew, and I did not see the rays of the sun. I did not breathe the air, but darkness was before me every day, and no one came to find me, the ghost says. The ghost seems to complain of some ancient that has happened to himself or to his tomb, but cannot make out what is the subject of the dissatisfaction. The ancient Egyptians believed strongly in life after death, and created a series of spells called the Book of the Dead, which they believed helped them reach the afterlife. Oh my god, I'm not gonna lie, like if I was like a Egyptologist, archaeologist, and I found like a little story that was like, no, it was all darkness and no one came for me, I would freak out. So those were 10 of some of the most famous ghost stories out there. I'm sure you've heard about most of them. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you have a creepy rest of your day or evening wherever you are. And I shall see you next time for another episode.